Life is not as it seems. Paths leading to undesigned destinations. Realizations made evident through the pain suffered, only to be asked one question: who am I? Come with me on the journey through the forest of life, where the empathetic heart meets the cold, cruel world, where betrayal and heartbreak meet care and compassion, and where despair meets fulfillment. The journey is not just a podcast, but a new way to perceive life. Listen in as the journey guides you to the mountains of self-love and the beaches of enlightenment. To become that CEO, that business owner, that amazing leader in your own life, the path of personal growth and development has to be followed. Let the journey help you take your power back and guide yourself to your highest desires. Hey everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode of The Journey, the podcast where we dive deep into the mindset shifts that can transform your life. Today, we're tackling a topic that many people struggle with, often without realizing it: living in a scarcity mindset. What does it mean? Why do we fall into it? And how can we break free from it? If you've ever felt like there's never enough, whether it's money, time, or opportunity, this episode is for you. In this episode, I'm going to explain how thinking from a mindset of lack can cause you to lose in a variety of different ways. I'm going to provide you with real-life stories of successful entrepreneurs that have discovered this secret, although unfortunately, not by choice. I'm also going to provide you with tools that will guide you to living from your most abundant life. Let's start by talking about what exactly a scarcity mindset is. But before we dig in, here's a word from our sponsor. Craving that authentic Louisiana flavor you just can't find anywhere else? Look no further than Snapper Seafood Restaurant, the small place with big taste. At Snapper's, Louisiana-style cooking is our passion. From perfectly cornmeal crusted fried catfish to tender, juicy collard greens, every dish is crafted with soul. And don't forget, the mouth-watering sweet yams, the perfect complement to grandma-style fried chicken. Let Snapper's Seafood Restaurant bring the bold flavors of Louisiana to your plate and savor the taste of the South in every bite. Give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Snapper Seafood, located at 1501 Ohio Avenue, Richmond, California. The scarcity mindset is a subtle yet powerful force that shapes the way we see the world. Imagine living in a state where every decision is driven by the belief that resources, whether it's time, money, or opportunities, are limited and fleeting. Every choice feels like a gamble, a desperate attempt to secure something before it slips away forever. It's like standing on shifting sand, where each step forward is uncertain and fear of loss looms larger than the hope for gain. People with a scarcity mindset often fixate on what they don't have, unable to see the abundance around them. They may compare their progress with others, feeling inadequate, or make decisions based on short-term survival rather than long-term growth. Even when opportunities arise, they might hesitate, worried that taking a chance could leave them worse off. This mindset can lead to hoarding, anxiety, or even self-sabotage as they struggle to grasp control in an unpredictable world. But the scarcity mindset isn't just about resources. It's about belief. It shapes how we view ourselves, what we think we deserve, and what we think is possible. It limits dreams and can trap us in a cycle of fear, preventing us from embracing new possibilities and trusting in our own ability to thrive. To break free requires a shift. an internal reprogramming that allows us to trust that there is enough, that we are enough. Only then can we step beyond the narrow confines of scarcity into a world where possibilities are endless and opportunities are abundant. A scarcity mindset is this ingrained belief that there are limited resources in life. It's the feeling that no matter what, there's just not enough to go around. Not enough money, not enough success, not enough happiness. And when you're stuck in that mindset, it impacts everything. You can't think long term because you're focused on surviving day to day, and that limits your opportunities for growth. This mindset isn't just about finances, though that's often where we notice it the most. It can also affect how you approach relationships, career opportunities, and even your own personal development. Scarcity creates a sense of competition where everyone else seems like a threat, and you're constantly trying to hold on to what little you think you have. Today, you're going to learn how Howard Schultz, the former CEO and chairman of Starbucks, was one decision away from walking away from the franchise, how Blockbuster laughed at the Netflix executives after being offered to buy the small startup, and how Kodak failed to adjust to the changing market. In our lives, we end up at a poorly designed destination because we fail to move from what has worked in the past to what will work in the future. The amount of regret felt for not following your heart or gut can be avoided if you use 4 key elements in decision making that even big corporations use to make company decisions. So let's get into it. Starbucks' former CEO, Howard Schultz, recalled a story where Starbucks was in its infancy as a franchise. The company wasn't doing well to the point that he and 2 other colleagues were actually baristas in the Starbucks just to keep the business afloat, and they had no income for 2 years. He recounts having a discussion with his father-in-law where his wife's dad told him, "Hey, look, whatever you're doing, I respect it, but it's not a job. It's a hobby. You need to get a job. My daughter is pregnant and working, and you don't have a paying job. I think it's time to give this coffee business up and get a real paying job." Howard said he was in tears and understood where the father was coming from. He said that he pondered the request for a few hours, ate dinner, and when his wife's parents went to bed, he told his wife what her father had said, and his wife responded that he was not to turn back and that he was going to see these things through. She was really upset with her father that he said that to him. And this was in 1987. He stated that his wife, in that conversation, was literally the glue that kept him going and saved the Starbucks franchise. And in June 1992, at the time of its initial public offering, Starbucks had 140 outlets with revenue of $73.5 million, up from the $1.3 million in 1987. The company's market value was $271 million by this time, and the 12% portion of the company that was sold raised around $25 million more for the company, which enabled it to double its number of stores over the next 2 years. By September 1992, Starbucks' share price had risen by 70%. Had Howard Schultz made the decision to give up his ambitious dream of selling coffee, we probably would not have ever heard of a Starbucks. In our lives, we must continually set new sails in order to be driven by the ever-changing winds of circumstance. Scarcity sure could have played a major role in Howard walking away from what he knew as the coffee giant, Starbucks. So Howard's father-in-law was worried and fearfully told Howard to get a job and leave Starbucks as a hobby. For those who resonate with this story, remember that the more you are hurried and stressed, the more you are missing out on the magic. The component of compassion was missing from the father and embraced by his wife. These stories lend themselves to understanding the nature of a scarcity mindset. Now let's get into Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a video retail chain that started off small, but soon gained momentum in the early 1990s and peaked in sales in the early 2000s. According to Isha Lee, an author with Inspire IP blog, Blockbuster was unwilling to believe that the digital entertainment market was the new future of videos. Netflix CEO Mark Randolph recounts a story about how Netflix attempted to sell the company to Blockbuster for $50 million, which Netflix had incurred in debt. Blockbuster executives notified Netflix that they were willing to meet with them in Texas the next day. But the Netflix executives were on a retreat when they got the news of the meeting and had to book a private jet as there was no flights that could accommodate the timing of the meeting. Once they arrived in Dallas, they were dressed in very casual clothing, a t-shirt and flip-flops. The executives were, leaning into the pitch that Netflix would run the online stores and Blockbuster would manage the physical stores. Randolph called it a blended model. The question finally came up: how much? Once the Blockbuster executives heard the price of $50 million for a struggling online company, the room went silent. Netflix executives were struggling to interpret the silence when Randolph realized that Blockbuster was trying to hold back from laughing. And so the deal never went through, and Netflix never heard from Blockbuster again. Blockbuster was determined to compete with Netflix. Fast forward to today, and Netflix is worth an estimated $467 billion. Now, you might ask yourself, why did Blockbuster pass on Netflix? And how did Netflix manage to keep pursuing the dream of online movie rental entertainment? Well, Blockbuster had little to no faith in the online industry, as they were currently at the lowest point in the dot-com crash, and believed that the physical stores were the better option for long-term growth. Netflix stuck it out, decided to stay with the subscription model of DVD rentals, although in the short term, they would lose money on customer acquisition. Had Netflix believed that there was just not enough resources available to continue with the idea, we would probably be watching movies from Blockbuster online movie rentals. So, a string of bad decisions based on there not being enough evidence at the time to move forward with online video rentals caused Blockbuster to fold. Blockbuster's board member and activist, investor Carl Icahn, fought against the company's entry into the online rental market, urging it to remain to its brick-and-mortar origins. To achieve this, Icahn handled the firing of John Antioco, who served as CEO of Blockbuster for 10 years, beginning in 1997, and then in 2007, Jim Keyes was appointed to the position. Similar to Icahn, Keyes was dedicated to Blockbuster's physical and mortar operations. Nico Celentano, a former Blockbuster shareholder, wrote after Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010, "Jim Keyes is the main reason Blockbuster is in the position today due to his denial of being in a business model that did not work anymore. If Jim Keyes would have seen the changes that were evolving in this industry in the past few years, Blockbuster would not have been in the courts today filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Jim Keyes has failed in his job as CEO of Blockbuster and should resign immediately." The amount of finger pointing was insane. And Jim Keyes went on to interview about this situation and stated that he had a movie contract deal with Hollywood that would have secured Blockbuster 300 movies that only Blockbuster could use, and the board said no. I guess Blockbuster saw the online world as a threat and was just trying to hold on to what little they thought they had. So one last example, which I believe is noteworthy, is the story of Kodak. And so I'm sure everybody's familiar with Kodak film and cameras, and that was like the biggest thing before digital. And so Steve Sonson, the Kodak engineer who invented the first digital camera in 1975, characterized the initial corporate response to his invention this way. But it was filmless photography. So management's reaction was, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." According to Chunka Moy, an advisor on strategy and innovation, to understand how Kodak could stay in denial for so long, let me go back to a story that Vince Baraba recounts from 1981. When he was Kodak's head of market intelligence, around the time that Sony introduced the first electronic camera, one of Kodak's largest retailer photo finishers asked him whether they should be concerned about digital photography. So, with the support of Kodak's CEO, Baraba conducted a very extensive research effort that looked at the core technologies and likely adoption curves around silver halide film versus digital photography. The results of the study produced both bad and good news. The bad news was that digital photography had the potential capability to replace Kodak's established film-based business. The good news was that it would take some time for that to occur, and that Kodak had roughly 10 years to prepare for the transition. The study's projections were based on numerous factors, including the cost of digital photography equipment, the quality of images and prints, and the interoperability of various components, such as cameras, displays, and printers. All pointed to the conclusion that adoption of digital photography would be minimal and non-threatening, but only for a time. History proved the study's conclusions to be remarkably accurate, both in the short term and long term. The problem is that during its 10-year window of opportunity, Kodak did little to prepare for the later disruption. In fact, Kodak made exactly the mistake that George Eastman, its founder, avoided twice before when he gave up a profitable dry plate business to move to film, and when he invested in color film, even though it was demonstrably inferior to black and white film, which Kodak dominated. Kodak now has a market value of $140 million and teeters on bankruptcy. Its prospects seems reduced to suing Apple and others for infringing on patents that it was never able to turn into winning products. Kodak management not only presided over the creation technological breakthroughs, but was also presented with an accurate market assessment about the risks and opportunities of such capabilities. Yet Kodak failed in making the right strategic choices. Let me get this straight. Kodak invents the first digital camera, although they never attempted to move the business in that direction, feeling that there was not enough data to support the decision to research and develop extensive digital camera technology, even after obtaining extensive market intelligence that said otherwise. So, this isn't an academic question for Vince Baraba, but rather the culmination of his life's work. The guy has spent much of his career delivering market intelligence to senior management. In addition to his experiences at Kodak, his career includes being director of the U.S. Census Bureau twice, head of market research at Xerox, head of strategy management at General Motors during some of its best recent years, and inclusion in the Market Research Hall of Fame. Vince Baraba, a market intelligence consultant that delivers researched information to corporation executives, argues that 4 interrelated capabilities are necessary to enable effective enterprise-wide decision-making, none of which were particularly well represented during pivotal decisions at Kodak. 1. Having an enterprise mindset that is open to change. So, unless those at the top are sufficiently open and willing to consider all options, the decision-making process soon gets distorted. Unlike its founder, George Eastman, who twice adopted disruptive photographic technology, Kodak's management in the 80s and 90s were just unwilling to consider digital as a replacement for film. This limited them to a fundamentally flawed path. And sometimes in our lives, disruption contributes to progress. To believe that there is not enough resources causes a scarcity approach to the situation. Number 2, Vince Baraba says, thinking and acting holistically. So separating out and then optimizing different functions usually reduces the effectiveness of the whole. In Kodak's case, management did a reasonable job of understanding how the parts of the enterprise, including its photo finishing partners, interacted within the framework of the existing technology. There was, however, little appreciation for the effort being conducted in the Kodak research labs with digital technology. Thinking and acting holistically in our own development can help teach us about the way life actually works and not just what someone else leads us to believe. Had Kodak changed the way in which they thought about the nature of the data presented, they may have been more willing to take on the endeavor of disrupting their current product model and moved to adopt an upcoming technology shift. Vince Baraba goes on to also say being able to adopt the business design to changing conditions. Baraba offers 3 different business designs along a mechanistic to organismic, so product to consumer continuum. Okay, 1, make and sell. 2, sense and respond. And 3, anticipate and lead. The right design depends on the predictability of the market. Kodak's unwillingness to change its large and highly efficient ability to make and sell film in the face of developing digital technologies lost it the chance to adopt an anticipate and lead design that could have secured it a leading position in digital image processing. The unwillingness of someone living in a scarcity mindset to adjust to change usually negatively impacts their ability to anticipate and lead themselves to desired outcomes. And finally, number 4, making decisions interactively using a variety of methods. This refers to the ability to incorporate a range of sophisticated decision support tools when tackling complex business problems. Kodak had a very effective decision support process in place, but failed to use that information effectively. The wealth of information at our fingertips are key components to managing and overcoming some of our most complex personal challenges. We just have to have the courage to trust in the data. And so, you're probably saying, Jimmy, how can I be more aware that I'm living in a scarcity mindset? And how do I go about changing this mindset? Well, here's some methods that will definitely get you on your way to living a more abundant lifestyle. There are a host of mental health professionals who have made it their mission to help people break free from scarcity and embrace abundance. Psychologists and life coaches have worked with countless numbers of clients on shifting their mindset, as it's such a huge issue for so many people, even when they don't realize it. According to many psychologists and life coaches, there are some signs that someone might be living in a scarcity mindset, even if they're not consciously aware of it. One of the most common signs is constantly feeling anxious or worried about the future. It could be anxiety over money, feeling like you're always on the edge financially, or worrying that opportunities won't come around again if you miss them. Another sign is comparison. People in scarcity often compare themselves to others, feeling like everyone else has more or is doing better. There's also this general feeling of just being stuck. People in a scarcity mindset feel like there's no way out, that they're trapped in their current situation, and that no matter what they do, they won't have enough or be enough. And that's really powerful because so many of us can probably identify with at least one of those feelings. What's fascinating to me is that this mindset can develop even if someone is doing okay on paper. For instance, you could have a stable job and a decent income, but still feel like you just don't have enough. Maybe scarcity isn't about how much we have. What if it's about how you perceive what you have? Someone can be earning six figures and still feel like they're one step away from losing it all, while someone else who earns far less may feel content and abundant. It's all about the mindset. So, how do we start to shift out of this scarcity mindset? Well, you may ask yourself, what are some practical steps you can take to move toward abundance? The first step is awareness. You have to recognize that you're living in scarcity because you can begin to change it. Journaling or reflecting on your thought patterns is a great way to start. Ask yourself, where do I feel like I don't have enough? And how do I react when I feel like resources are scarce? Once you've identified those areas, the next step is to challenge those beliefs. Ask yourself, is this really true? For example, if you think you'll never have enough money, ask yourself why. Is there actual evidence to support that belief? Or is it just something you've internalized over the years? After that, it's about practicing gratitude and focusing on abundance in the areas of your life where it already exists. Scarcity makes you hyper-focused on what you lack, what you don't have. But shifting your focus to what you do have can slowly start rewiring your brain. Ask yourself, what things, knowledge, or skills do you have already, and how can they be used to further your goal? Gratitude really is key. It has to be practiced. It doesn't just happen overnight. You have to build that muscle over time. But with consistency, you'll start to notice the shift. One small exercise I recommend is writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day, no matter how small they seem. Because over time, you'll start to train your brain to see abundance, even in areas where you previously saw lack. Personally, I found that when I focus on gratitude, I'm more open to new opportunities because I'm not stuck in fear. It's like I'm creating space for more abundance to flow in. When you stop operating from a place of fear, you create room for more opportunities, more connections, and more growth. People who live with an abundance mindset believe that there's more than enough to go around. But let me be clear, it's not about being naive or ignoring challenges, but about believing that those challenges aren't the end. They're just part of the process, trusting that there is enough and that you are enough. So, before we wrap up, here's one last piece of advice I'd give to someone listening who feels stuck in a scarcity mindset. Don't, and I repeat, don't underestimate the power of small changes. Shifting from scarcity to abundance is a process, and you don't have to do it all at once. Start with one area of your life, whether it's finances, relationships, or even self-worth, and work on changing your beliefs in that area. With time, that mindset will start to permeate other aspects of your life as well. So remember, abundance is a mindset, and it's something you can cultivate with practice. Again, thank you for listening, and I love you guys.